All right, Chris, the DocuWare Ninja here to help some of my customers and anyone else that might want to know how to add vendors to a DocuWare pre-configured solution for invoice processing. Well, that was a lot to say. So this also could apply if you have any other DocuWare system or workflow that we're kind of storing data within the DocuWare system. So in our pre-configured solution, when we go to store a document, the company name field here, if we don't have anything pre-filled, this drop down below pulls from what we call the vendor master list. So one question is, where is that vendor master list? So by default, in a pre-configured solution, that vendor master list resides in something we call this company records. So this is where, on the DocuWare side, the vendor master list lives. Now, this could be potentially attached to your vendor master record or your vendor master list in your accounting system or ERP. We could also just have the field in the AP file cabinet directly attached to that. But out of the box, the solution, the pre-configured solution uses its own company records or vendor master records list. And often we do a one-time import of all of your, vendors. So what happens when we need to add a vendor later, if we want them to appear in the dropdown, or if we're using vendor check, we might not even be able to get an invoice through without them being in through the workflow process, without them being in that company records file cabinet. So I've looked in my company records, I've done a search, and I've seen that the new company that I have does not exist. Let's see what we have here. So let's say we have an invoice from DocuWare and they're not in my vendor master. What do we do? So there's two main ways, and one of them is actually designed to take some work off of your plate and put it onto the vendors. So in our forms tab here, this is another one. I know I've done a couple videos where I've said if you don't have access to this, talk to your administrator, because you do have to have access rights to the form to be able to get it in the first place. But if I can go over here to forms and I see this form, if I click on this, this is just a dumb URL. I don't know how dumb it is, but it doesn't, I don't have to be a DocuWare user to access it. So what does that mean? That means I can copy this link, so I can right click and copy it. I can throw it in an email and send that link to the vendor and say, hey, if you want us to pay you, we need you to fill out this form. So the other option is you could fill it out for them, and that would work just the same. So let's say we're gonna say this is DocuWare Corporation. 123. Actually, we can just use the real address. Roddy Lane. And just FYI, if you don't care about the address, you don't have to put it in here. The only required fields are the ones with the stars. So DocuWare Corporation, we'll leave the city and all that off of there. Contact name is going to be required. I'll make myself the contact. Actually, we'll make it DocuWare Ninja just for fun. Phone number, so the contact is required. If we don't care about the payment type, you can make these not required. So if we're not using any of the payment type features in the pre-configured solution and we don't care, we can take that off at the administrative level to where, and we could also remove the fields altogether. But as it sits, stars are required, not a big deal. To the vendor, where also this W9 is required. If you wanted to make this not required, you could do that as well. But in this case, I'm gonna just pretend like this is my W-9 document and go ahead and attach it. So once I submit that form, it now goes into the DocuWare workflow for you to approve the new vendor. So you'll see we have a task, and this task, I believe, goes to the role of finance managers. So again, on the admin side, you need to make sure somebody has the role of finance manager. They will see this new vendor onboarding tab. So we click on that workflow, and it's different from our regular AP workflow. Notice it's got the black top to it because it goes with the black company records cabinet. So that's why they're color coded there. So when I have this new vendor onboarding task, if you have a 7.4 brand new template, you'll have the subsidiary number, which is kind of predefined. If you're using a 7.3 or older template, that won't be there. The information might be a little different. Once again, the stars are required. Everything else is optional. Vendor number. So this, obviously the vendor number is something you created in your accounting system. So let's just say this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's why it kind of stops in this step before it completes the new vendor creation, because in a real live environment, you send this form to the vendor, they fill it out, it automatically creates a task. You go in your accounting system, create the vendor number, and you can fill out any of the other terms, like, do we want this to be a quick match vendor? With the auto approval, we're going to say no, and we click confirm. So now notice we don't have a task, but if we go in our company records cabinet and search for company master records, we now have DocuWare Corporation as a vendor. Great. That's fantastic. Was kind of a lot of work if I was doing that myself. The point of the form is to send that to the vendor. And again, if our W-9, remember I just used a sample document, but if there was a W-9 attached, that would also be attached. So that's kind of handy to have your vendor record and any W-9s or insurance certificates or whatever else right with it. But if our goal is, hey, we just want to quickly get the vendor in here, they're already in my accounting system, I just need to add them real quick, this other method would probably be the way to go. So here we're going to go into a document tray. Doesn't matter which document tray it is, can be any document tray. And we're used to clicking on a document and going to store, but what we're going to do here is a little different. We're going to click on the white space, so anything that is not a document. And notice we changed from store to create data record. So what that means is we're creating a record in DocuWare without a document, because that's what our vendor record is. So we're going to scroll on down and find any of these that say company record. And there's sometimes a couple different ones. And if you have an older template, it may say something other than vendor master record. It might say company record, standard store dialog, whatever, they all work. The new one's kind of nice because it pares down the amount of information. So new vendor record, once again, stars are required. So I have my vendor number. So we'll make this one 987654. This one, we're going to call this DocuWare group, just so we have it be different. If you want to capture street and all that, you can. Contact name, at this point, that's optional. So again, if you already have it in your accounting system, you don't care if it's in DocuWare or not. All you really need is the name and number, and that is the only required information. We just click create data record, and now in our company records, we do a search. We have also DocuWare group. If I go to store an invoice now and say there's nothing in there, now my new stuff will be in this list. So to summarize, we can click on the forms and email this link to our vendor and have them do the work. And again, the way we do that, open the form, copy the link, And some organizations will even, post this on their website. If you're a new vendor, here's your form, get them to do it ahead of time. So, just copy the link and I can paste that into an email or whatever, send it to the vendor, or I can fill it out myself if I want, or I can go to a document tray, click on the white space, create data record, and pick something in that. The key is the company records cabinet is what we call that in any version. That's what it's going to be called, and that's where your vendors live. One note I just thought of: if you are manually creating this record, the workflow does use payment type. So when you're creating a new vendor record, we'll call this DocuWare 3. It is not required for the field or for the dialog. It'll let you store it without this, but for the workflow, it will hang up and ask you to put in a payment type. So if you put in a payment type, and again, if you're not using it to differentiate, just pick one of them. It doesn't matter. We can just put that in there, and then the workflow will sail through nice and easy. Hope that was helpful. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer and put them in the comments, and we will put out another video or contact you directly and give you some help.